Hey y'all, welcome back to the TXRF podcast. This is officially the 6th episode. No bonus episodes or anything this week. But it was a crazy season, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. The Rangers, of course, winning 60 games, dropping 102 in the loss column. But they weren't the worst team in baseball. Baltimore and Arizona have those titles, each with about 110 losses, I think. And the silver lining is that the Rangers are going to be the third overall pick in the 2022 draft. One thing we will certainly be talking about today. But I wanted to do a full season retrospective just to look back, some of the good, some of the bad, talk about some of the guys in the early part of the season, Kyle Gibson, Ian Kennedy, Joey Gallo, who were really big contributors to any sort of success that Texas had. And I'm not including Adolis Garcia in that list because he was there the whole season. So I'm going to talk about all kinds of good stuff today. So without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. The first topic I want to talk about is overall my feelings on the season and, of course, how they actually did. So as we all know, they went 60 and 102. Not good. It was actually third worst in all of baseball, and I'm currently pulling up their baseball reference page so we can kind of dive into the stats here, but not good at all. There were some signs of, things to come at the beginning of the season, like in May and a little bit in June. They had some streaks of winning. Well, I mean, like literally small streaks of winning because, as we know, they didn't end up winning more than 60 games. But with that being said, I wanted to remind some of y'all about some of the key players that were on the team either prior to the trade deadline or maybe they just fizzled off by the end of the season. And the biggest one is none other than Joey Gallo. He has not been doing too hot since traded to the Yankees. He was hitting 223 with Texas at the time. And with the Yankees, or he finished the year batting 199. Still got 38 home runs, drove in 77. Still had an OPS above league average at 808. I think it was about 3, or, well, hello, not 3. I think it was about 730 is what I meant to say there. So he still has above league average production and OPS plus at 122, which for those not too familiar, OPS plus is just a like ballpark adjusted kind of OPS, more weighted towards everybody, and league average on that is 100. So he was at 122 this year, despite only hitting 199 and had a 4.6 WAR season. That is, of course, wins above replacement. So all in all, pretty insane stuff from Gallo being able to produce that kind of season, given those stats. Moving on to another player, though, that was a big contributor to this team. It's Kyle Gibson, sent over to the Phillies, of course, in that trade. It was him alongside Ian Kennedy, and in exchange, they got Spencer Howard, I think, and maybe another prospect. I think they also sent over Hans Kraus. That was all within the same trade. So whatever your opinion on that is what it is, but Kyle Gibson finished with a 3.7 ERA, 3.71 specifically, 10 wins, 9 losses, almost 200 innings, 182, struck out 155, and a whip of 1.22. So maybe a slightly above average season in this era of really big offense, but with the Rangers, he did have a 2.87, and of course was a all-star this year as well, as was Adolis Garcia, and then of course Gallo was there for the home run derby, but I don't like to talk about that derby because of the way it ended. So those are two big guys there. And looking at the list here, oh yeah, Ian Kennedy. Duh, I just mentioned his name. He finished with a 3.2 ERA. Wins and losses don't really matter for relievers, but he was 3-1. Had a 1.4 WAR, 55 games, 26 saves, struck out 62 with a WHIP of 1.101. So pretty solid season, especially given his age, coming up on 37 years old here soon. But with Texas, let me see. Well, I went down too far. Ian Kennedy had this is this is team batting. Where is the pitching stats? There it is. Ian Kennedy had 16 saves with Texas and an ERA of 2.51. So a great season from him as well. I can't remember if he was an all-star. I guess it would tell me on here, given that I'm on his baseball reference page. He was not. But he certainly had an all-star worthy season with Texas. Overall, not as much. Still good though, 26 saves, 3.2 ERA. Any team would like to have a guy that can do that. Now on the opposite end though, we can talk about some guys that certainly underperformed. One of the top ones is Mike Fultonevich, which he is a free agent now, I believe. But he was 2-12 with a 5.44 ERA. Pitched in 28 games. Only started 24. I say only, but usually you start all the games there. 139 innings, gave up 139 hits, 35 home runs allowed, 97 strikeouts, and his ERA plus, which similar to OPS plus, is a weighted thing to the whole league average of 100. His was 81. Actually, the only person in the rotation that was above 100 was Gibson. Dane Dunning was just behind with a 97. Colby Allard had a 81, and Lyles had an 85. So a couple of interesting numbers there. That was definitely a disappointing year from Faulty. He did hang in there mostly, but at some point they just had to stop giving him innings. There was also, I'm going blank on the name now. That's why you prepare for your podcast, folks. Another failed signing, in my opinion, was David Dahl. I was really hyped about it. Like I was posting, man, this is a steal for Texas. Like if he can come back to his all-star form, then we're going to be in business. And it seems like that was the thought for a lot of teams because he did not get close to that all-star performance that we have seen in previous years. I think it was 2019 with the Rockies, of course. And, say what you will, could be the Coors Field effect, could be whatever. But the matter is that he did not deliver on what people expected of him. And baseball is tough. So I'm not going to hold it against him too much here. So that's another one there. Charlie Culberson is kind of mixed. He was injured, I believe, a fair amount, so I won't hold that against him too much. 243 batting average, and just a good veteran to have on the team. I'm sure he provided a lot of insight to some of the younger guys. And who else? DJ Peters was a surprise positive signing. And yes, he was batting below 200 technically, but ended up producing some big hits, some big RBI games, and could be another surprise player for Texas. Chris Davis. That's the other one I wanted to talk about. I know he wasn't a signing, but that he was the result of the Elvis Andrus trade along with Jonah Heim, who we'll also talk about in a second. Very, very disappointing year for Chris Davis because we were also used to him beating the crap out of the Rangers. So we're like, maybe if we sign him, he can do the same thing to other teams. But unfortunately, no. His OPS plus was 64 for those wondering out there. I think he only hit like 1 or 2 home runs with the team because it says here he hit 2, and I don't know if that was just with us or if that's the whole season. He had 3 in the whole season. Okay, so 2 with us. I mean, it's always tough to trade a franchise player away and get someone else's franchise player, but in this instance, Chris Davis did not have the same impact anymore that he used to. Eli White was good for a while. I know it's not a signing, but I'm just seeing some names on here that are getting me thinking. But I will circle back now to Jonah Heim, also included in the Elvis Andrus trade. He's turned out to be pretty good for a catcher, pretty good option alongside Jose Trevino, who had a solid season as well. So I think they have some good options at catcher. Of course, there is the one and only Sam Huff that should be on the starting roster next year, as well as Josh Young at third base. We should be starting to see some of these guys that we've been waiting on for a little bit here. So someone else with a solid season, and now I'm not really specifically talking about signings, but Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, of course, great defense, a little bit lacking in the OPS department, but all around a great player. 172 hits, that's a good mark to get to. He played in 158 games, just 26 years old, just starting to really get into his prime. So once he was healthy, this is transitioning to another player here, Willie Calhoun was showing signs of brilliance again. He's been getting the injury bug once again this season. Not really his fault at all. I think most of his last injuries were just him getting hit by pitches. So, yeah. But hopefully we can see him back in action 100% next year. No games missed. Once again, not his fault, but for those who don't remember, they acquired him in the Yu Darvish trade to the Dodgers. He was one of their top prospects at the time, I think, and lots of potential. Next, of course, you can't talk about this season without talking about Adolis Garcia. He did fall off a little bit in the second half, but he did manage to hit 30 home runs, 90 driven in, both all-time records for Texas Rangers rookies in franchise history. Great stuff. Another guy who was showing signs of brilliance at the end of the season is Andy Ibanez. 277 on the year for batting average. And I think he was having like 10-game hit streaks or something insane like that. Yeah, something like that towards the end of the season was absolutely going off. So he's going to be exciting to watch next year. Leody Taveras had some moments. Jason Martin had some moments. Curtis Terry, unfortunately, wasn't ready yet, but once he is, I assure you he'll be doing well. John Hicks, I forgot he was up. He had a little bit of a stretch there. Then Ronald Guzman, unfortunately, was injured. Anderson Tejeda just was not fully ready yet. And then Ryan Darrow, I don't even remember who that is, to be honest with you. So I think I went through just about everyone in terms of offense there. Oh, yeah, some other ones pitching-wise. Kohei Arihara, which once again, I think he was injured, but that was a bit disappointing. He had some signs of really showing what he could do, but just not fully there. Towards the end of the season, Taylor Hearn, my guy, former channel guest, I was going to say podcast, but I didn't have the podcast when I interviewed him. He went on a pretty good stretch at the end of the season. Josh Sorbs also had some good moments as a closer. I think I said John King. Did I say John King? I don't know if I did, but he was all right as well. Dennis Santana was very up and down, but he finished with pretty good numbers. Hyunjin Yang was not fully ready yet. Jarrell Cotton has been a decent signing. Joe Barlow is probably going to be the closer now. You can talk about these guys all day now. A couple of the unfortunate ones, Glenn Otto and Spencer Howard, both acquired from the trade deadline. Spencer Howard was one of the top Phillies prospects, and he's currently sitting at a 9.7 ERA for us. So he fell off. I'm not sure what the issues were there. Probably some injuries and adjusting to a new team. Glenn Otto was acquired from the Yankees. Had a couple good appearances, I believe, a couple good outings, and then a little rough at the end of the year. Matt Bush made an appearance in the final game, so can't really judge that yet. And then, of course, the Rangers' Cy Young candidate, he should win it because they haven't voted on it yet. Brock Holt, 1 inning, perfect ERA. I mean, that's the guy, Brock Holt, right there. As well as Charlie Culberson. Hello, Charlie Culberson. He pitched in a game as well. 2 innings total on the season. I don't know. Yeah, he pitched an inning in a couple games. So 2 aces up the sleeve right there. And that's the last guy I'm going to talk about, actually, is Brock Holt. He had a pretty solid season as well. I'm trying to find his name on this list because I know he is still here. Yep, there he is. I mean, he's just a good veteran presence to have around, and that is kind of what the team was trying to do, is get some veteran guys that can help lead these younger guys when the time comes. So we'll see what happens with that. But that is my really long-winded explanation of how I think most of the players on the team did. Y'all can, of course, let me know on Instagram, Twitter, in the comments what you think of that. But that's going to be it for the first segment, is how I think they did this season, which the overall synopsis is they underperformed greatly. It wasn't as bad as the 2020 hype where they're like, oh, we got Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Corey Kluber, and we're going to dominate the AL West, and it's going to be a team focused on good pitching. And on paper, yeah. But Corey Kluber got injured. I think Kyle Gibson had a subpar season, and Lance Lynn was Lance Lynn. So that is really all I got to say on that one. But y'all let me know what you think. And the next thing I'm going to be talking about is how they can improve and what free agents will be available when the time comes. All right, so now it is time to talk about the free agent class coming up. And this article is from October 2nd, so it should be pretty updated. I don't think anyone has signed yet, but this is from MLB.com. And it just kind of highlights some of the notable free agents for this year, next year, and the following year. I'm mainly going to focus on this upcoming offseason because that is what the Rangers need to really start doing, is building on some of these free agents. And then, of course, waiting until the younger guys come up like Josh Young and Sam Huff, Cole Winn, all these big guys that are going to be coming up probably next year or maybe the year after at the very latest. But catcher is the first position. I'm just going to go in order of what this article shows. Texas doesn't really need a big name catcher, which actually I guess this is wrong, I think, because it says Yadier Molina, and I believe he is staying with the Cardinals. And then there's Roberto Perez, Buster Posey, and Christian Vasquez all on club options. I don't see any of those guys leaving anyway, but Texas has plenty of options at catcher, and it also would kind of be a red flag for Sam Huff if they started signed like Buster Posey somehow, you know. We'll have to see how the postseason run that they're about to do here affects the Giants as well, because a lot of their team is on the older end now. But moving on, first base, Brandon Belt, Freddie Freeman, Anthony Rizzo, Ryan Zimmerman. More guys that I don't really see going anywhere except Zimmerman, because they gave him a huge ovation on the last game with the Nationals. But Brandon Belt, Freddie Freeman, and Anthony Rizzo aren't going anywhere. Rizzo's probably going to stay with the Yankees. So moving on from that, second base, Starlin Castro, Cesar Hernandez, and Marcus Semien. Once again, more guys I don't really see going anywhere. And then third base, shortstop, and outfield are some of the big ones. And of course, pitching is always a big one. But looking at third base, Nolan Arenado can opt out if he wants. Chris Bryant might be available if the Giants don't extend him. Eduardo Escobar, Jose Ramirez, and Kyle Seager on club options for those two. Kyle Seager did get a big ovation, kind of like Zimmerman, so he might be leaving. But as far as the other ones, Nolan Arenado probably won't opt out. He's getting a pretty good amount of money from the Cardinals, and he had a good season. So I don't see a reason why he would leave. Chris Bryant, depending on what the Giants do, he might decide to leave. If they win, he might stay. If they don't, he might go. I don't know. He has a ring already, as many of you know. Probably one of the best rings in MLB history, the 2016 Cubs. So Eduardo Escobar is potentially an option on the cheaper end. And then Jose Ramirez probably won't leave. If they could get him, that would be amazing. He's one of the best third basemen in the whole game. And then Kyle Seager. We'll be getting to Corey Seager in a second. Kyle Seager, not really. He always puts up good seasons, but they kind of have some veteran third base options signed already within Holt and Culberson. So Javier Baez at shortstop, Carlos Correa, Corey Seager, Andrelton Simmons, and Trevor Story. All great options. I am the most partial to Carlos Correa. He's been the most consistent of anyone on this list, maybe alongside Corey Seager. Andrelton Simmons is always a good defensive option, of course, and he's got some pop. Sometimes Javier Baez is probably the objective worst hitter on this list. So, and I don't know how he's defensively either. I know he's known for making crazy plays, and that's why his name's like El Mago and all that. And then Trevor Story is a toss-up for me. I think he would be one that suffers from not playing in Coors Field 81 games a year. But it's all a matter of who strikes first, so to speak, who's going to sign the first guy and set the tone for the market. So I would probably be torn between Correa and Seager, but Story wouldn't be a bad option, and I believe he's from Texas as well, so that's another thing. Looking at outfielders, don't really see anyone super crazy here. It looks like it's mostly opt-outs, player options, or club options. So, and Texas has plenty of outfielders. They got Garcia now, who will definitely be staying. They did have Gallo, but got Taveras, Calhoun, so many other guys. So I just thought as well in the first segment, I forgot to shout out Nathaniel Lowe. So I apologize if he's somehow listening to this. He had a phenomenal season, a legitimate career year for Mr. Lowe. So someone's going to comment that because I'm sure not everyone makes it this far in the podcast. So I apologize to Mr. Lowe for not giving him credit on a great, great season. Moving along, starting pitchers, Trevor Bauer. I'm not even going to go there. See, Clayton Kershaw has been a big name to potentially come to Texas, but he did just end the season on a big injury, so that might affect his chances a little bit. Corey Kluber, they're not going to do that again. Max Scherzer, Marcus Stroman, Noah Syndergaard, Justin Verlander. Stroman would be a good one to get. He's great pitcher. Scherzer would be another good guy to get. Syndergaard is up and down. He's a good one as well. And Verlander is coming off a TJ, but people think he might come back to Houston. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And then there's a few relievers that will be on the market, including guys like Kenley Jansen, Andrew Miller, which I didn't know he was still pitching, Adam Ottavino, Trevor Rosenthal, Brad Hand, etc. Can't go wrong with that, but the Rangers should have Joe Barlow, Jonathan Hernandez, and Jose Leclerc at least for their closer options. So that's a look at this year's free agent class, pending any changes between me recording this and me posting this, which will only be like not even 12 hours. So should not be anything changing there. A glimpse into next year, you got guys like Gary Sanchez, Jose Abreu, Eric Hosmer, Max Muncy, Jose Ramirez again, Tim Anderson, Didi Gregorius, Gene Segura, Dansby Swanson, Trey Turner, Benintendi, Blackman, Buxton, Kane, Duvall, Joey Gallo if they want to get him back, JD Martinez, Jose Barrios, Zach Britton, Chapman, Edwin Diaz, Craig Kimbrell, lots of ranges of guys. And then they talk about potential ones for 2023, which includes a list of guys like Manny Machado, Jose Ramirez again, Rhys Hoskins, Cody Bellinger, Blake Snell, Josh Hader, Yu Darvish, Tyler Glasnow, Aaron Nola, Jacob deGrom, who's been a big name this past season, of course, Julio Urias, Lucas Giolito, Jack Flaherty, guys like that. So that's pretty far ahead. But in terms of this offseason, based on this list, the absolute like dream offseason would be get Chris Bryant. Actually, no, they don't need Chris Bryant because they're going to have Josh Young. So get Carlos Correa, and then maybe get Marcus Stroman, and then maybe get like a Brad Hand. Let's see how Brad Hand's done. I know he kind of fell off at one point, I thought. Let's see. Whoop. Hello. Brad Hand. Okay, my keyboard's not working with me here. Let's see. He's 31. Did not have a great season this year, but still did 21 saves. He was 6-7 with a 3.9. So my point is maybe get one closer, just as another guy, maybe a more veteran guy. So sum that up: Carlos Correa, Marcus Stroman, and then some veteran reliever. Doesn't have to be a closer, but kind of like the Ian Kennedy thing. See what happens. But that is going to be it for talking about the actual potential guys that Texas could sign in the offseason. Like I mentioned, there are some guys that are going to be on the come up here. So that will play into what might happen in the next 2 years, right? Because they're going to sign hopefully one person this offseason. They've been saying that. There's been articles where Chris Young, John Daniels were like, yeah, we're spending money this offseason. So we shall see. And lastly, today I wanted to discuss who Texas may pick in the 2022 draft. I know it's extremely early and the college season can change a lot of things, as we found out with guys like Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Texas has the 3rd overall pick for 2022, just behind the Diamondbacks and the Orioles. And I'm taking a look at an article from Jonathan Mayo, who is one of the top guys when it comes to prospects. He knows his stuff. It's another MLB.com article from July 20th. And normally I would say that's dated, but nothing has really happened. I don't think in terms of college prospects. The season isn't starting for a few months either. So taking a look, they got the Diamondbacks taking Elijah Green at number 1 overall from IMG Academy in Florida, which I don't know if that's a high school or not. It sounds like a high school. So let's see. High school. Second, they got the Orioles picking Dylan Lesko, right-handed pitcher from Buford Buford High School in Georgia. And I forgot to mention, I think that Elijah Green's an outfielder. I don't know if I said that. But right-handed pitcher Dylan Lesko going to Baltimore at number 2 overall. So that will be interesting. And he was up to 96 miles an hour at the recent MLB USA Baseball All-American game. Pretty darn good for a high schooler. Looked like he was committed to Vanderbilt, or is committed. So we'll see how that follows through. And then they got us at number 3 picking Jacob Berry, third baseman out of Louisiana State. Now, I think that is interesting because they got Josh Young coming up like next year, ideally. But he had a freshman year in Arizona where he hit a slash line of 352, 439, 676 with 17 home runs and 70 driven in 63 games. Now going to LSU, switch hitter as well. Wow. Okay, that might be part of the big appeal. If you can be a high average hitting switch hitter, that's nuts. So, okay, I can get behind that. I think I can agree with that one, depending on how the following months happen here. But I just think that's interesting. I guess they're planning ahead a little bit, or maybe want to move Josh Young to somewhere else. The name I did want to talk about, or a couple here, they have Andrew Jones' son going to the Twins at number 6, and of course he's an outfielder. And then at 7, this was the name I wanted to really talk about, was Jace Young, second baseman / third baseman at Texas Tech, and he is the younger brother of Josh. So I was thinking maybe they try to get him, but once again, it depends on how the college season goes and how he performs. But that would be one that I want. Potentially one guy that would be good. And the weird thing, which this is just in this particular mock list, but they don't have Kumar Rocker in the top 20, which was shocking to me because he went 10 overall this year, and that was shocking in itself. So that will be a bit of an interesting storyline, I guess. For those who don't know, Kumar Rocker pitched alongside Jack Leiter in that Vanderbilt team. That was one of the best rotations in baseball up until the very end when they lost. But two of the best guys in all of college baseball last few seasons. And Kumar Rocker dropped all the way to 10. Jack Leiter, of course, went number 2 to Texas. A lot of the conspiracy was that teams knew about his injury or maybe were hesitant because he had like a shoulder injury or something. The first red flag was that he refused to give teams like his x-rays or his physical or whatever. So I think that's why he fell to number 10. And number 10 was none other than the Mets. So classic Mets fashion, I guess. And he put out like this whole statement through Scott Boras, like, yeah, he's decided not to sign with them, blah, blah, blah. Like, he'll be coming back next year better than ever. So I was surprised to not see him on this top 20 list. He should definitely be a first rounder unless he just totally falls off next season. But that was one of the top guys I was thinking of for Texas to pick at 3. But that's why I'm not an MLB scout. This guy, Jacob Berry, looks pretty good from coming out of LSU. So once again, let me know what y'all think about that. I'm not going super in depth into the draft picks because there's not much to say yet, but I wanted to touch on it and provide some insight into what to expect for this next college season, high school, and keep your eye out for some of these names. That is about going to wrap up the podcast here, though, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one today. I know it is a little bit longer than I've been doing, I think, but I actually had a lot to talk about today. So it's exciting. I'm going to get the offseason kicked off into full swing here. Got the MLB postseason going, which is always great. And that's been fun to watch. I always like watching it, even though the Rangers have not been in it, of course. You don't need me to tell you that. We all know that. But yeah, it will be exciting when the actual offseason starts and these names start getting thrown around. Whenever the winter meetings happen, that's usually the official kind of set to the offseason. So looking forward to it. Let me know what y'all think about anything that was discussed here today. If you want me to talk about anything in the future on the podcast, definitely let me know. And yeah, it should be quite an off season. With all that being said, though, I also want to mention my SeatGeek code. I know I've been plugging it the last few episodes here. But even though it is the off season, you can still use it on Cowboys games, Mavericks games, Stars games, FC Dallas, all that good stuff. I mean, you name all the sports teams in DFW here. But it's also good for concerts. And that code is TX Rangers. Save you $20 on your first purchase. So go out and see something if you'd like. Maybe get your mind off baseball for a bit if you're sad about the season, which totally understandable. So I just wanted to throw that out here again. And now that that has been said, I will stop talking. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to y'all later.